Hello everyone, my name is Tyler Murray and I will be discussing an art object in relation to some peer-reviewed research on art history and semiotics. I will be exploring themes such as image circulation in the Web 2.0 environment, juxtaposition of image and text in art, as well as theory on humor in art. Let's check out the object. This is James Fridman. He's a graphic designer in the UK who has risen to social media semi-fame after his works have gone viral across several different social media platforms. Fridman has discovered an algorithm that produces content that is easily shareable in a Web 2.0 environment. By employing humor, following a mimetic format that presents image and text together, and diluting his work across digital networks, Fridman has found considerable internet fame. He has 2.1 million followers on Instagram, 1.9 million followers on Twitter, and 1.5 million Facebook followers. His process relies heavily on the social and sharing capabilities of social media networks. Fridman's mimetic algorithm goes as follows. Fridman models himself as a Photoshop expert, and social media users will submit their personal pictures and request that Fridman adjusts a certain aspect of the photo. He then grossly and intentionally misinterprets what the user wants and sends back a humorous manipulation of the original photo. Let's check out some examples. So the first example we have here is from Raquel, and she emails James and says, "It seems that I have a boy in my head. Can you remove it?" And he replies back, "Sure, that's a no-brainer," with a photo where her head is completely photoshopped out. Another example here is from Hannah, who in James' Twitter DM says, "Hi James, could you please make the cows a little closer?" And he sends back a Photoshop photo of her holding a piece of steak. Pretty funny. Finally, we have Greg here, who emails James and says, "Hi James, will you please make me look like a bad boy?" And he replies back saying the police are on their way, and he photoshopped a sign that says no sunglasses, no fanny packs, no tattoos, no mustaches, which is what Greg here is wearing in the photo. So as you can see, in each case, he presents two photos, and one with captioned with the request made by the user, and one with his response. The formal qualities and contexts in which the Fridman works are presented can be considered through several theoretical lenses. His process exemplifies the circulation of mimetic imagery in the Web 2.0 environment, as discussed by Schiffman. He is digitally literate and practices his networked individualism. His art is indexical to a long history of image and text being presented together. It reflects a society that has begun to prioritize the concept of an object over the object itself. It is a process of anchoring, or in Fridman's case, misanchoring, the image using text. Finally, Fridman's use of humor is important to consider. Humor is culturally constructed and creates an other. What other is conjured in Fridman's work? James Fridman and his misinterpreted Photoshop series are examples of how the combination of image and text, as well as humor, are features that increase an object's shareability in a Web 2.0 environment. Schiffman identifies three main components that are relevant to contemporary digital culture. 1. A gradual propagation from individuals to society. 2. Reproduction via copying and imitation. And 3. Diffusion through competition and selection. The currency that artists are competing for in a digital landscape is attention. Image circulates and is guided by an attention economy. It is clear that Fridman has found success within an attention economy, but how did Fridman obtain this slice of the pie? What features in Fridman's work have led to his success across digital platforms? Art in a Web 2.0 environment finds success by adapting to the socio-cultural environment it exists within. Fridman's work is a success in a Web 2.0 environment because it relies on challenging culturally understood social norms of photography and image manipulation. Photo taking, Photoshop, and the sharing of content on social media are conventionally meant to present the subject as elevated and perfect. The humor of Fridman's work lies in its ability to render the subject vulnerable, grotesque, and unnatural. The Friedman algorithm is dependent on his content's omnipresence on social media. He has multiple social media accounts where he not only posts his work, but interacts with his followers and receives content to manipulate. Friedman doesn't go out of his way to find photos to manipulate because his followers will slide into his DM and provide it for him. He relies on what Schiffman calls express paths for memes, where content spread by individuals through their social networks can scale up to mass levels within hours. This has clearly happened for Friedman, as he has racked up millions of followers and gets hundreds of thousands of likes. Friedman's work is constantly being seen from anywhere and is constantly being shared. Like the digital culture it exists in, Friedman's Photoshop work is a social process that relies on the contributions of many individuals. The juxtaposition and interplay of text and image are a prominent component of Friedman's pieces. Each post will contain an original picture, image, the user's Photoshop request, text, Friedman's response, text, and the new manipulated photo, image. Theory on image and text together has a long history. Barthes, in 1977, introduces anchorage as a primary function of providing a linguistic code along with an image. He says anchorage may be ideological, and indeed, this is its principal function. The text directs the reader through the signifieds of the image, causing them to avoid some and receive others. In Friedman's work, the intended Photoshop request is anchored in the participant's text, while the misinterpretation is anchored in Friedman's textual response. The text disallows the viewer to make their own interpretations of the work, and blatantly highlights the changes made by Friedman. The anchoring function of text in Friedman's work makes the imagery easily disseminate in a digital environment. Text and image together is an art practice that became prominent during the 60s and 70s, during the rise of conceptual art. Consider this example, Victor Pergin's Possession from 1976. Kaliva argues that this is an early example of the functions of text in art. The photo used by Bergen would be understood in an unintended context if it weren't for the text provided. The statistic at the bottom clearly situates the image as a critique of capitalism and the wealth gap. In the 60s and 70s, text began to be used with image because artists want to highlight the idea and concept behind the work over the work itself. Artworks are no longer standalone objects that can be invariably interpreted. They are concrete messages and comment on the world they exist in. The countless misunderstandings demonstrated in Friedman's work are commentary on a digital landscape in which there is constant pressure to present one's best self. Now let's address the issue of humor, which is an obvious component of Friedman's work. Like digital culture, humor is a product of social interaction and cultural understandings. Clements describes humor as a key cultural mannerism that offers an insight into society and its cultural conventions, values and taboos, as well as wider ideological issues. The very fact that Friedman's works elicits a humorous reaction demonstrates that he's in touch with the current cultural landscape. Clements also discusses how humor can create an other. In this case, the subjects are not the other, because although they are the butt of the joke, they are also in on the joke. The other are those who do not have access to digital hardware and network software, and individuals who may not be social media literate. Those people are not included in the humor of Friedman's images. It is important to recognize the power structures associated with humor. The work of James Friedman is a perfect case to consider for discussing the diffusion of imagery across a Web 2.0 environment. His work is highly shared, liked, and viewed, demonstrating value in an attention economy. It is also a useful endpoint to a genealogy of text and image relationships in art. It demonstrates that some artists are beginning to prefer artwork that is rooted in specific concepts and ideas rather than open it up for viewer interpretation. It demonstrates how humor is a culturally created phenomena that often intertwines with digital networks. Overall, James Friedman's work is an example of the use of image and text, as well as humor, to spread imagery in a Web 2.0 environment.